Philippine-American relationship, then and now. Relations between the United States and its former colony, the Philippines, is strong, historically close, and extremely friendly. The United States is undeniably the Philippines' closest ally in the world. This video will show you the history and how the relationship was formed and its current state. Battle of Manila Bay, Mock Battle of Manila. May 1, 1898, at the Manila Bay in the Philippines, the U.S. Asiatic Squadron destroyed the Spanish fleet in the Battle of Manila Bay, the first major battle of the Spanish-American War. The Spanish Governor-General mistakenly thought the smoke of battle near Cavite in Manila Bay signified a Spanish victory, and cabled this welcome news to Madrid via the underwater telegraph that was Manila's only link to the outside world. May 2, 1898, Commodore Dewey notified the Spanish official that, since the cable was the only way communications could be sent from Manila, it should be considered neutral, so that he could use it as well. When the Governor-General refused, Dewey dispatched his sailor to dredge up and cut the cable, ending the direct flow of information out of the Philippines. August 12, 1898. The brief and one-sided Spanish-American War comes to an end when Spain formally agrees to a peace protocol on U.S. terms. The peace protocol signed by Jules Cambon, the ambassador of France and representing Spain, and William R. Day, the U.S. Secretary of State, in the presence of President William R. McKinley. The protocol suspended hostilities and defined the terms on which peace negotiations were to be carried on between the U.S. and Spain. August 13, 1898. The mock Battle of Manila commenced at 7:30 in the morning. It was part of a series of battles for the occupation of Manila during the Spanish-American War. At 8:45 a.m., the large American warships began positioning themselves for attack. At 9:45, the big guns boomed and the large shells began raining down on the fort at Malate. There was only sporadic and light return fire. The events were planned and seconded by U.S. General Wesley Merritt and Spanish Governor-General Fermin Jaudeñez, respectively designed to keep Manila from falling into the hands of the Philippine Revolutionary Forces led by Emilio Aguinaldo, satisfying the desires of the Spaniards to save their honor, having fallen to the Americans and not to the Filipinos. At 11 a.m., Admiral Dewey hoisted his signal flags to demand the Spanish surrender. Over the following tense minutes, nothing appeared to be happening. General Greene entered the city with some of his troops riding into Luneta. There he was confronted with a heavily defended barricade and a group of Spanish soldiers who, like the insurgents, apparently were not aware of the unfolding script. Tensions was reaching the flashpoint when, at 11:20, Admiral Dewey at last saw the white sheet flying over Manila. Quickly, he dispatched word to his ground forces to enter and negotiate the surrender terms. By 5:30 in the afternoon, the fighting was over and the United States flag flew over the capital city of the Philippine Islands. Since Admiral Dewey caught the only cable that linked Manila to the outside world, the news on the war's end did not reach the Philippines until August 16. Calle Sosiego. February 4, 1899, Privates William Grayson and Orville Miller, while doing sentry duty, encountered 3 Filipino soldiers on Sosiego Street in Santa Mesa, Manila. These 2 soldiers sparked the Filipino-American War. Grayson and Miller were pacing their districts when they came to a fence to see what the Filipinos were up to. Grayson yelled, "Halt!" and made it pretty loud. He challenged the Filipino with another loud halt. The Filipino shouted "Halt" back to Grayson. The private then shot him. 2 more Filipinos sprang out of the gateway. Grayson called "Halt!" and Miller fired and dropped one. Grayson shot the other. Grayson's first shot was consequently the first of the Filipino-American War. Taft Commission. March 16, 1900, United States President William McKinley appointed the then Judge William Howard Taft to head the Second Philippine Commission, which would also be known as the Taft Commission. Taft would become Governor General of the Philippines and later the President of the United States. McKinley wanted to hasten the transition of the Philippine military government into a civil one. The Taft Commission was given executive and legislative powers it could use to achieve the President's objective. The Commission arrives in the Philippines on June 3, 1900. It began legislative work on September 1. The first law it passed set aside 2 million pesos for the construction of threads and bridges. From Commonwealth era. The Commonwealth was the culmination of efforts to secure a definitive timetable for the withdrawal of American sovereignty over the Philippines. It was not until the Jones Law of 1916 that the pledge of eventual independence, once Filipinos were ready for self-governance, was made. The Jones Law led the creation of an all-Filipino legislature composed of the Philippine Senate and House of Representatives. On November 15, 1935, the Filipino people took the penultimate step to the independence with the inauguration of the Commonwealth of the Philippines. On September 16, 1 million Filipinos had trooped to the polls to elect their two highest officials, the President and the Vice President. This was the first time in the history of the nation that a Filipino would actually sit as chief executive and hold office in Malacanang Palace. Senate President Manuel L. Quezon and his running mate Sergio Osmeña were elected as President and Vice President, while voters elected representatives for the new unicameral National Assembly and for local positions. In 1934, a new mission negotiated the Tidings-McDuffie or the Philippine Independence Act, which sets a 10-year transition period to be known as the Commonwealth of the Philippines, followed by the recognition of the independence of the Philippines by the United States. The Tidings-McDuffie Act established the parameters for the preparatory period. Some powers of supervision were reserved to the United States as well as foreign diplomacy and currency. In all other aspects, the Philippines became self-governing. Japanese arrives. Europe first. December 8, 1941. Japan invaded the Philippines. Clark Air Base in Pampanga was first attacked and also Nichols Field outside Manila. December 22, the Japanese forces landed at the Lingayen Gulf and continued on to Manila. General Douglas MacArthur declared Manila an open city on the advice of Commonwealth President Manuel L. Quezon to avoid its destruction. January 2, 1942. Manila was occupied by the Japanese. MacArthur retreated with his troops to Bataan while the Commonwealth government withdrew to Corridor Island before proceeding to the United States. USAFE, composed of Filipino and American personnel, held off the Japanese war machine that had routed the French, British, and Dutch colonial governments in the region. But lack of reinforcements, disease, and obsolete armaments due to the Europe First policy adopted by United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt. April 9, 1942. The joint American and Filipino soldiers in Bataan finally surrendered. General MacArthur returns. The general and his family escaped the islands by making a harrowing journey aboard a PT boat to the southern islands of the Philippines, where they flew to Australia. Once there, MacArthur released a statement to the press in which he made his famous promise, "I shall return." 90,000 American and Filipino troops were still holding out, waiting for rescue. MacArthur expected to find an army waiting for him in Australia, an army that would be ready to take the fight to the Japanese right away. He found nothing of the kind. The decision had already been taken that the European front would be the focus of the Allied effort in the war. It was not until the fall of 1944 that General MacArthur and Admiral Nimitz finally planned a joint operation, the invasion of the Philippines. The invasion would see the largest sea battle in history that took place in Leyte Gulf. Kamikazes were also a problem and caused many deaths, but the Japanese were in a desperate situation. In March of 1945, the capital city of Manila was in Allied hands. USA and Philippines are allies. After the war, Manuel Rojas was elected president in April 1946 for the independent Second Republic of the Philippines. In a formal declaration, the American flag was lowered in Luneta, Manila, and raised the Philippine national flag in tricolor of red, white, and blue, looked up by proud Filipinos. Finally, independence was granted to the Republic of the Philippines dated July 4, 1946. The national anthem of the Philippines was played next to America's. It was indeed a moment of liberating glory for all Filipinos after pools of blood were shed in many revolutions. Although the history has not always been cheery, relations between the two countries are good now. The United States and Philippines are allies.